My name is Jeff Dawson. I'm an author. One of my favorite books I wrote is called Love's True Second Chance. It is a true love story of my high school sweetheart, Debbie Beck. We dated a year and a half in high school, had a horrendous breakup, then reunited 30 years later. In January of 2009, we're allowed a wonderful 7 months together until her breast cancer came back with a vengeance. You can find the book on Amazon. It's for the Kindle format, or you can get the paperback version. Today I want to talk about flags and the abolishment, therefore, of them. Last week, NASCAR made it very clear that they would allow no more Confederate flags at their events. This weekend was the Dixie Vodka 400. And I did a post questioning how the hell did the word Dixie slide by. You think of Dixie, you think of the Old South. In fact, there was a Warner Brothers cartoon between Yosemite Sam and Bugs Bunny where they portrayed the North and the South. I guess they're probably going to have to get rid of that cartoon too. God knows what else they're thinking about. But let's talk about flags. Okay, you want to get rid of the stars and bars. Now, I was born in Toledo, spent 9 years in Delaware, and then we moved to Tulsa. So I got to live in the North, and I got to live in the South. And I didn't think much about it. I knew of the Civil War, but I hadn't really studied it. Moving to Texas, I got a real introduction into the stars and bars. I also watched NASCAR back in the 60s and 70s when it was really racing and not all this corporate crap. That's irrelevant. So we want to get rid of the stars and the bars because it denotes slavery. Okay? I understand it not being flown at the state capitals of the South. Why was the South allowed to fly those flags? Granted, they were lower than the American flag, but still, a lot of those states could still fly it at their capitals. The question is why, and we'll get back to that. So what other flag would you find offensive? Well, let's think about that. How about the stars and stripes? Well, why would that be on the hit list? Oh, bear with me. I want to read a few names to you and their states. Connecticut, Oliver Wolcott. Delaware, Caesar Rodney. Gregory Reed. Georgia, Burton Gwinnett. Lime Hallman. Maryland, Samuel Chase. William Paca. Thomas Stone. Charles Carroll. Massachusetts, John Hancock. The John Hancock with the big signature we're all familiar with. Joshua Bartlett. William Whipple. New Jersey, Richard Stockton. John Witherspoon. Francis Hopkinson. John Hart. Abraham Clark. New York, William Floyd. Philip Livingston. Francis Lewis. Lewis Morris. North Carolina, William Hopper. Joseph Hughes. John Penn. Pennsylvania, Robert Morris. Benjamin Rush. Benjamin Franklin. George Taylor. Rhode Island, Stephen Hopkins. South Carolina, Edward Rutledge. Thomas Hayward. Thomas Lynch Jr. Arthur Middleton. Virginia, George Wythe. Richard Henry Lee. Thomas Jefferson. Benjamin Harrison. Thomas Nelson Jr. Francis Lightfoot. Carter Braxton. What do those names have in common? You only get one guess. They were slave owners. Well, in today's climate, that could be found offensive. So, is there another flag that comes to mind that offends you? Well, we keep hearing how racism is systemic in the United States and has been going on for over 400 years. Well, who brought it here? How did slavery come to the United States? Because at the time, it wasn't the United States. And in 1776, it was still the colonies. That would be the Union Jack, England. The Empire of Great Britain, which at the time, the sun never set on their empire. Who was responsible for the slave trade from Africa to England to the New World? Well, that would be England. And the Dutch had a hand in that. And why did they bring slaves? Well, let's think about the benevolent English Empire. It was nothing of the sort. Ask the Chinese how that worked out. Ask India how benevolent England was to them. They weren't. They were an empire. And they ruled as an empire. So I kind of laugh when I watch a lot of people that want to keep up with what's going on with the royal family. Now, granted, I am a fan of Queen Elizabeth. I don't have a problem with her. But in today's climate, despite her being a good woman, despite her being heavily involved in supporting the troops during World War II and staying in London during the Blitz, the Union Jack was a very oppressive flag. England was not kind to the countries that she conquered. England brought slavery to the New World, and first it started out with the rice trade. They thought that was great. And then that turned into tobacco, and that turned into cotton. And by geography, the southern part, the southeastern part of the United States, or rephrase that, the colonies, was prime agricultural land for those crops. Well, England now has a new economy that they're building. This is a new agricultural push that is going to supplement their empire. So what do empires do? Exploit. And they found chieftains in Africa that were more than willing for a few dollars to sell them the workforce that they were looking for. And you can do your own research to verify this. But think about that. Then there's another flag that has nothing to do with this. But in 1940, it started in 39 and World War II erupted when Germany invaded Poland. Germany had two allies, Italy and Japan. Okay, fair enough. They had an alliance. And before 1941, there was a fourth country that was an ally, tentatively, but they were an ally of Germany. The Soviet Union. Because remember, when Germany invaded, Poland was split up between the two. And the Baltic countries didn't get a say in this. They were just, Hitler told Stalin, yeah, you can have them. Who cares about that? But there was another country, Japan, the rising sun. At the end of the war, we know what happened to the swastika. That was eliminated. The Italian flag stayed the same because they were never really deemed a major threat. The Italian army was incompetent at best. They really didn't. They supported what Mussolini had done. He had rebuilt their economy, but as far as rebuilding and revisiting the Roman Empire that Mussolini thought he could rebuild, the people just weren't behind that. They weren't equipped for war. They didn't have the mindset for it. I mean, they got their asses kicked in Ethiopia. They tried to take North Africa, and that was a miserable failure until Hitler sent one of his favorite generals, Rommel, down there to try and regroup and save some face. I mean, everything Italy touched, it just kind of went to hell. So that brings us to the rising sun. They decimated China. They basically enslaved the Koreans because they have a very long history of hating them. They bombed Pearl Harbor, and that resulted in over 450,000 American deaths and casualties, wounded. So why did Japan why were they not required to change their national flag of the rising sun? I would always grimace when I would watch the Little League World Series. Japan, which those kids are very good in baseball, but I want to know why their flag wasn't dismantled. They brought a lot of hardship, a lot of strife, a lot of grief. Now, there's something I have to add to this. Despite the world suffering 60 million dead in World War II across the world, we went in and rebuilt Germany and Europe for the fear that communism would spread. That was the reason. But these people who were our enemies became our allies. And the same with Japan. In a very short period of time, we were able to rebuild their countries and make them staunch allies of the United States. And I'm not going to say we completely forgot, because a lot of veterans I'd talked to through the years and actually saw down at an air show at Executive Airfield in Dallas, they still had a lot of animosity towards the Japanese. They understand they are an ally, but they lost a whole lot of buddies. But we became allies, staunch allies, economic allies to a degree. So how is it that we can become strong allies with a conflict that killed tens of millions of people Hell, we allied with England. We'd fought 2 wars against them, defeated them twice, the revolution in 1812, yet we come to their aid in World War I. How is it that we could rebuild with those countries and we can't do it in the United States after the Civil War? I'm going to do another segment on this, but from what I can tell and what I've read, this all falls on the shoulders of Lincoln's Democratic Vice President, Andrew Johnson. So as far as flags go, should we get rid of all those that I mentioned because of their history? That's something to think about. And like I said, I'll be doing another segment about Andrew Johnson and Confederate monuments.